Okay, so now on to outdoor kitchens, countertops, and fire features, or what we call our masonry panel construction. So first, we'll just take you through, I think, an overview of what I would consider probably one of the most important parts of this presentation is really looking at where the outdoor kitchen market is right now. So whether you're doing lick and stick type of construction methods, or you're using a cinder block or more of a masonry type of construction method. I think regardless, I think you'll be really happy when you see the way that we're able to take, I think, a pretty difficult process and turn it into a very easy and simple process. So I think most of us have seen outdoor kitchens being constructed. Like I said, I'll go through a couple of the methods. First is the lick and stick, which is your backer board, your paper, your lath, your adhesive, your thin brick, your thin stone, Eldorado stone, whatever it is. A masonry skill is still required for this. It's very time consuming if you've done anything like this before. And you're going to need the masonry skill set. You're going to need, I guess, in our world, the labor cost is obviously going to go hand in hand with that. Using commodity materials that anybody can buy. And in the presentation prior to this, we were talking about being in that price war, or competing on price, which is probably the last place any of us want to be as contractors. You're going to need a poured footing for, let's say, the cinder block type of method. Probably not as much for the aluminum or steel framing, lick and stick stuff as we talked about, but definitely for the cinder block. But you're again wrapping this in brick, rock, or block. You're putting concrete or granite countertops, so it's just going to be super heavy. So whether you're up in Massachusetts or you're down in Florida, a footing will still be required for a construction method like that, regardless. Now, in our opinion, that's too much time and too much labor. When we want to build outdoor kitchens or refreshment centers like this one, we can typically build them in a day or two, depending on the size. Now we have several profiles. First is our ledge stack, which is probably our most popular nationally. These are right on tiles next to a pool, right on pavers. Again, we can typically install on any hard surface, even composite or wooden decks, which we'll talk about in a minute here. Our dry stack, which is a really nice, smaller courses with no mortar joints. Our round rock or random rock, right on pavers, right on a composite deck, as we talked about, up in the mountain regions of New Hampshire, inside a roof structure. We'll talk about roof structures later. And then next to a pond here on Belgard pavers. Your cut stone or ashlar, or in Texas, they call this Austin stone. Looks really nice. See that installed everywhere. Now, on the economics, it'll cost you, the dealer, anywhere from $200 to $220 a linear foot with a countertop to build an outdoor kitchen structure. So in this example, we have an 8-foot island, 34 inches wide. It would cost you around $1,600 to build that structure. Now, we're not talking about grills and refrigerators and cabinetry and all of those things. We'll always add those later, but just to build the structure. Now, you need to do your homework if you haven't done it already and find out what your competitors are getting for a full rock install like this. That again would be your Eldorados, your Cambridge pavers, right? Your lick and stick stuff. Now, in my area of New England, my competitor's getting anywhere from $700 to $800 a linear foot to build an outdoor kitchen structure, like this one, for example. This is an 8 by 8, 16 linear foot outdoor kitchen. Would cost you around $3,200, not again counting the appliances and the grill and the cabinetry, just for the structure and the top. Now, even if you were being aggressive in your market, and we're not a franchise, right? So you can price your outdoor kitchens and frankly, everything we're talking about on these instructional and informational videos for whatever you want to price them for. We'll give you suggestions, but ultimately it's up to you. Now, even if you're being aggressive in your area and pricing this for $400 to $500 a linear foot, you are still making a very good margin. And if you're pricing this outdoor kitchen 8 by 8 structure for at least what we would charge or I would charge, you're going to be even higher than that. So a fraction of the material needed than rock or block and labor, frankly, greater pricing flexibility for you, more competitive price points, and higher margins for the installs. Now, as far as building the panels, same 50-pound bag of mix we've been talking about since the very first video you watched. Our masonry molds are going to be about 8 foot by 4 feet. And actually, that's a little white lie because it's actually only 42 inches. So actually 3.5 feet, right? Which would be your bar height. So 8 feet by really, again, 3.5 feet, 42 inches. Now let's talk about the molds real quick because I get a lot of questions on the molds. These molds here, this mold here is probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. And the reason why I know that is the color of it. This is our first generation mold, and it is still alive and kicking. The point I'm trying to make is if you take care of your molds, you clean them, use the release agent, as I talked about, then these molds should really last you forever. You really shouldn't have to buy another mold from us once you purchase a mold, in this case, the ledge stack. Okay, now we take our 50-pound bag of mix, we pour it in the drum, we add water, so it's a single component. Nothing else needs to be added but water. You mix it for a good 2 minutes, I'd say. You put the release agent, spray that on your mold first, then you're going to put in your material. In about an hour's time, our material is what? It's 4,500 PSI. 3 hours, it's what? 7,000 PSI. So in a pretty short order, short period of time, these molds are still curing in these panels, but you can use them. You can use them in construction. So in this case, we're making an 8-foot island. We can take our 5/32 masonry bit. We're making 4 walls and a roof, right? Basic construction here, right? Drill right through, hold it together with a deck screw, clean up your edges with a diamond tip grinder or any loose debris from the mold, let's say. Then we take our wet mix, as we've talked about. Our wet mix will mechanically and chemically bond to itself with no cold joint. And this is something we teach you in training. Pretty easy to do it. Then we'll color with our water-based concrete stains. And there you go. As far as countertops go, there are a lot of interior countertops going on with concrete countertops. For the sake of this presentation, we're going to focus on the exterior. First, you're going to frame out your countertop out on melamine board or a dry eraser board if you want to have your countertops super smooth, because our material will take the impression of whatever you put it in or on. So in this example, we're putting the material, we're reverse pouring the countertop. What does that mean? That means that the top is the bottom, and we'll show you what that means in a minute. But we just frame it out, whatever size that you want or any shape. Then you take our 50-pound bag, again, the same 50-pound bag of mix. There will be one difference here with, again, we were pouring the rock molds for the water features and the boulders, and then the masonry mold for the outdoor kitchen we just went through. We will add a dye, an integral powder dye right into the mix for different colors that your customers might want. Now, could you use liquid integral colors? Certainly you could. A lot of times we use powder, but we have used liquid as well. Now, could you put integral powder dyes in the rock panels for the outdoor water features? Yes, you could. Could you put integral dyes in the panels for the outdoor kitchens? Yes, you could. Now, we'll show you the fundamentals and how we build and construct, right, our systems. But ultimately, it's up to you, and you can come up with different ways depending on your area that might match that. But I just wanted to point that out because I get asked that question a lot. But after we set up our colors, we'll pour our material right into the framing that we do. So if we're doing 2 bar tops on site, or we're doing a very large countertop, this is a vibrating concrete countertop table that one of our dealers built. I thought it was pretty cool. Told them I was going to take a picture and put it in the webinar. So this would be something that you would put vibrators underneath. You screw them into the bottom of your table. You put down your melamine or your dry eraser board. Probably a dry eraser board will make more sense for this. And then you hit the vibrators and the material will vibrate. Now, why are we vibrating? We're vibrating because we want to remove any sort of air pockets or air pinholes so that when we finish up and we pop our countertop, and I'm going to show you that in the next slide, it is very smooth to the touch. And I think that's what most customers are going to be looking for. We can use foam board cutouts for, in this case, your sink with your faucet holes or with a grill and a side burner. Great way to not waste material. It's also a great way not to have to cut through 2-inch thick concrete countertops at someone's house. Believe me, they won't like that. And it's avoidable. When we pop our countertops, they look like this. So they're completely done. You take a rubber pad, clean up your edges. Now, this makes the argument for why we add an integral dye versus coloring after the fact, which for those of you that do poured in place concrete countertops, you might be asking yourself that. The reason why we use the integral dye is because when our edges are exposed like that, look at how beautiful they look, versus, again, trying to color those after. So because you have exposed edges on your countertops, to us, it just makes sense to add the integral dye right into the mix. and it comes out beautiful, as you can see. Fire features, same construction method, panel on panel. You do your corners the same way. You frame out your top the same as we did the countertop, right on a melamine or a dry eraser board. Any size, any shape, any wear. Roof structures, this is a big want. You are going to see more and more of this if you haven't already on social media. This is up in New Hampshire. You can see the snow on the pine tree over here. Evergreen. But we can finish this off nice. There's our ashlar panel, right? And then the countertop. Foundation wraps and skirting. I think this is another great way to generate business and help customers. Now, as far as the surface square foot coverage and the economics, for each 50-pound bag of the DM-Crete mix, you will get 6 to 8 surface square foot coverage in your masonry panel. For the countertops, you're thicker, you're 1.75 to 2 inches thick versus 1.5 inches. Your 4 to 6 surface square foot coverage. You should be between $13 to $16 a square. Your cost, material and labor. Again, everyone's labor is a little different. That's why I have the range. And between $13 to $14 a square for your masonry panel. Next will be training. So to learn more about our trainings, what's entailed in learning how to construct what we think are pretty amazing exterior home improvements with our materials and our tools and our molds, click on the next video to learn all about our training platforms.